Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me this evening. I think you all know I'm Chris Williams. I'm here in the Michaels Community Classroom this evening, and I am thrilled to be with you to go through a little project tonight. This should be very simple for most everyone. We're just going to do 3 different styles of leaves and 2 different styles of berries and some shading color, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And also just to add to that 12 days of Michael's card making that Ilse was talking about, we are actually part of that here at Plaid. We're honored. We're actually going to be the 12th day of the 12 days of card making. I like to think they're saving the best for last. Maybe not, but I'd like to think that. And I'm honored. And I'm honored to be the teacher for that one. So I hope you join us not next week, but in 2 weeks. That's when we will be doing our card making lesson here from Plaid Crafts. So I think we can probably go ahead and go overhead. I'm going to bring this up real close so that you all can take a quick look at the finished sample, or what we often call the hero. This is all done with colors that coordinate very well for the fall season. And we are going to use some yellow ochre and some Pueblo. There's a dark green in here that is Thicket, and we're going to use some teal. There's 2 different colors of brown. One's a coffee latte, one's real brown. And that's kind of what we've got going on here. I thought this was very appropriate for the season and might be something nice to use in your displays as you're entertaining guests for Thanksgiving time when we all gather around the table. So I'm going to set my project aside here and bring up one that I already have a pattern transferred on. My pattern lines are very faint, but I can still see them. I'm bringing it up so that you can see. What I did ahead of time was I used the pattern that's available on michaels.com, and I made a tracing paper sample of that. And then I just kind of positioned the side lines here, the border lines, over the canvas itself, and I used an artist carbon paper that's called gray graphite. It's also referred to as a transfer paper. Mine is very well worn and very well used, but you can use it over and over and over again. And what you're going to do when you have it open is you're going to put the graphite side down. That's the business side. I'm going to put the graphite side down and sandwich it between my 2 pieces here. And then I use a tool that is called a Stylus, and I just basically kind of retrace over the pattern lines, and it's what gives me that transfer and that detail on my surface. I'm going to set this aside for now. And if you are following along and have attended many class with us in the past, you know to come to class with your pattern already transferred, like I have mine here. So let's go ahead and get some colors out onto the palette. I'm working with the FolkArt multi-surface paints, but that doesn't mean that you can't use the FolkArt matte colors as well. Whichever you have, or even a combination of the 2, would work for tonight's class. This is yellow ochre that I just put out on the palette. If you are painting along with me tonight, you're going to want to get some yellow ochre out. And you may use the vintage white that's on the supply list, or you may just let the white of your canvas show through. The white of the canvas is perfectly fine as well. But I'm going to, tonight, just for sake of doing the design with our yellow ochre, I'm going to use this direct. And this is a 3/4 inch flat brush that I'm working with. And let me bring over a paper towel here. And I'm going to show you that we're going to do, actually, I don't do a lot of floating, but we're going to float tonight. And I'm going to show you how I like to float. So not everyone floats in the same way, but I like to float. We're going to put some of the yellow ochre here on the interior of our square. We're also going to put it on the exterior of our square. And that's what we're going to start with. So I'm going to load my brush with some water, just simply by kind of brushing into my brush basin here. And I should tell you all that if you have any questions, do write them in the chat. Here at Plaid Crafts with me tonight, I have Caitlin Smith. She's my worker bee and my helper. She's our videographer extraordinaire, and she helps get our cameras all set up, and then she's moderating in the next room over. So if you have any questions, holler them out to Caitlin, and she's going to holler them back to me. Right, Caitlin? Well, Caitlin is here.
Right. Sorry, it took a bit to unmute.
Okay, so what I did was I wet the bristles and then I just touched the paper towel to kind of blot the bristles. If I'm working with beginners, one thing I like to do is I like to say, touch it, get it full of water, and then I want you all to look at those bristles. And you can see that they're very, very shiny while they have water in them. When you touch a paper towel, which is going to start absorbing that excess water, that sheen on the bristles is going to go away. So if you're new to floating, hold your brush to the paper towel until you see that sheen go away. There is a happy medium. You want the bristles wet or moist, but you don't want them soaking wet, like straight from your container of water. And that's why I like to share this little tip of how to load your brush and then basically offload the water onto a paper towel. I'm going to put the brush down and apply some pressure on the palette, and I'm going to ever so slowly corner load or stroke into the puddle of the paint so that I have some of the whatever color you're using. In this case, it's our yellow ochre. I'm going to have a brush that has yellow ochre on one corner, and I'm going to keep stroking here on the palette to where I end up with a brush that has yellow ochre and it has moisture. So the color is on this side, the moisture of the water is on that side, and it kind of just floats across an even space of transition of color. So what I want to do with the side that has the yellow ochre on it, I'm going to just do some little short pat blending. I'm going to just touch down and pat, pat, pat. I'm going to work on the inside of the little square first. And you can see how that color just kind of is a gradual shift of color. It's darker on the left-hand side of the brush, which is what I'm running up right along the pattern line of that inside square. I'm going to stop and refill my brush as I need to, and then I'm going to come and just continue on all four sides. I'm going to put that yellow ochre inside the square. And if you're painting along with me, you're going to be doing the exact same thing. Add a little bit more moisture, pick up a little bit more paint, blend on the palette, and then I'm going to add that yellow ochre right up next to that pattern line. And I'm on my last side now. And once we get this on our last side, I'm now going to take the corner of my brush that has just the water in it, no paint, and I'm just going to kind of lightly blend the ends of the yellow ochre / water side into that center. And now I have a very soft shaded inside area of this square. Now let's do the same thing again on the outside. Now you'll notice that when you look at my finished one, this one's a little bit more intense, a little more dark. Well, we're not done yet. We're just putting that color on there. So now we can, if you've already kind of played around with that inside square, you can now do your outside square. And this can go a little bit faster. And you'll notice as I'm doing this, I am going over my pattern lines. It's not disturbing my pattern lines. I can still see through them. And we're just putting a little bit of color on this canvas. And we're going to put it on all four sides of the outside. And you can see when if by chance you're watching, I'm using long, smooth strokes. Okay. All right. Now, what I'm going to do now, my inside is pretty much dry. I'm going to come back and deepen the corners of my inside. So I want you to see that I'm no longer going to do the straight lines. I'm now going to come into a corner. So I have yellow ochre on same side of the same brush, 3/4 inch flat. And I'm going to start here and just kind of go across the corner, making it a little bit deeper or wider in the pattern here. So I'm just brushing from the corner out, and I'm kind of filling in that corner space. So you can see how by just going across that corner, I've kind of made it a little bit deeper and wider. So you're going to do that to all four corners. And this again is still just my yellow ochre. And my inside was already dry. If yours wasn't, you might want to take it and hit it with a little heat tool or a hair dryer first. You don't want to move the wet layer of paint around. Okay. I'm wondering how many of you are painting along with us tonight. I saw as you all were joining that we've got lots of friends, regulars. I noticed a lot of names that I know as regular Michael's Community Classroom students. So thank you all for taking time out of your night tonight to come and paint along with me. All right, now my inside corners are dry. It's still not our last step, but we're gonna go move on from here, and we wanna darken these outside corners a little bit more too. So again, 3/4 inch flat brush, a little bit more yellow ochre, and I'm just gonna come across that corner and come down into the canvas a little bit. And look how beautiful that kind of darkened that corner. So I'm not going in like an L shape, following one side to the other side. I'm not coming in and then coming out. I'm going across that corner. Short, choppy strokes and just blending that yellow ochre down into the project. Something when you are darkening corners like this, if you do a lot of painting, what this technique does is it draws your eye attention towards the center of the painting. So this is a good thing to do. So we've got 4 corners on the inside of our box done and 4 corners on the outside of our box done. Just using the corner of the brush to bring that paint down into your project. And look how pretty that is. It just really has a lot of warmth to the painting already with just the yellow ochre, and it also now draws attention towards what's going to be our word gather there. So I'm going to drop my brush in my water for just a moment while I get another color out onto the palette, and that is going to be our Pueblo. Pueblo is a beautiful orangey brown, beautiful fall color. I often like to use it because it's kind of almost like a terracotta type color too. It blends really beautifully with our yellow ochre. And we're going to take that same brush. I did kind of throw it in my water, so it kind of rinsed out that yellow ochre that I had in there. And now I'm going to just pick up the smallest amount of our Pueblo, blending here on the palette to soften that color. The Pueblo is now going to just on the inside of the box, just these inside interior 4 corners, we're going to bring some Pueblo on top of the yellow ochre. So blend on your palette, and then we're just going to darken these corners, the inside corners now, just a little bit more with some Pueblo. And here's one done. So when you look at this versus the other 3, it really warmed that corner up a little bit more. So we're just going to do that to the other 3 corners. And I'm kind of going across the corner again, same idea where I'm kind of deepening the shadowing in the corners. And I'm just going across, keeping that Pueblo to the corner area. And I've got one more on mine. And going across this corner as well. Okay, now this is not the end of our interior box. At the end of our class, or one of our last minute details, we're going to do a little bit more to that. But let's start working on our leaves. Now, when you look at the leaves, we actually have 3 different styles of leaves and 2 different styles of berries. So we have multiple, it's kind of like an overall pattern. We have multiple brown leaves. We have multiple of these tiny little yellow leaves. And then we have this kind of like fern stroke here. So those are our 3 different sets of leaves. If you enjoy painting at a smaller pace and only want to do a couple brown and a couple of each style, do that, because once you learn the technique, you'll be able to pick it up and then finish it later if you prefer painting slower. So let's work on our leaves first. And I'm going to go ahead and start with the brown leaf first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with getting our two browns out onto the palette. And the browns that we're working with is Coffee Latte, which is just a really nice warm tan color. So that's what you want to get out is Coffee Latte. And then you need to get a nice, rich, deep brown. I'm using Real Brown. Burnt Umber is another good color you could use. And I'm going to switch down. Let's see, what size do I need to work with? I'm going to switch down to like a number 10 or 12 brush, flat brush that is. Let me get this paper out of the way. And what I want to do is I want to fill my brush first with our lightest brown here, our Coffee Latte. And I just want to go around as quickly as I can and kind of base coat or fill in the shape of these brown leaves. I'm not going to worry too much about stroke direction. I'm just kind of using the brush and filling in a leaf stroke. And so all of the brown leaves are all painted first with our Coffee Latte. You'll notice it's almost like two sections when you look at this leaf. There's a bulbous kind of round bottom to this leaf, and then a second part, almost like, think about building a snowman almost. The second part is a little bit more bulbous, but of course it comes to a tip because, excuse me, it is the second part or towards the tip of the leaf. So just paint these in and paint them as smooth and even as you can. Notice that there, if you are painting all of your leaves at one time along with me, there's a couple leaves. Of course, they're all in various directions, but there's a couple leaves that you might even only get just a portion of the leaf. It might be underneath our interior square. It might be kind of leaning out towards the, over the edge of the outside of the canvas. Just fill in as much of the leaf as you can. I never counted up how many brown leaves there are. I will here in just a moment. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It looks like I've got 9 here. Let me count on my other one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep, there's 9, a total of 9 brown leaves. So if you're painting along with me, there's brown. And this brown again is our Coffee Latte. 9 leaves to kind of paint in with your lighter of your 2 browns. This one, I'm going to take a chisel edge along that flat edge of my frame and just kind of paint that in. So now I have, I think, all of my brown leaves painted in. I'm just going to quickly brush over to make sure I've got all of the shapes right. It's just kind of putting a little bit, almost like another little layer. I'm just kind of straightening out any edges that I want to make sure that they're really kind of curved. The only point you should see on these leaves is the very tip of the leaf where you do have a point or an edge. Everything else should be kind of more roundish. This is kind of a bulbous leaf. Don't ask me what kind of tree this came from. It came from my imagination as I drew out my pattern. So, okay, now what I want to do is kind of let this set for just a moment. So while this is setting, I'm going to go ahead and rinse out this brush, and I'm going to start with our smallest leaf, and there's fewer of these leaves, and that's that one that's kind of yellowish. This is going to be painted in solid with our yellow ochre, and it looks like we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my leaves were all designed in numbers that were odd numbers. So I used the same brush. This is a number 10 or 12, whichever you're comfortable with. And you want to go ahead and paint in the smaller little leaf. That's our little yellow leaf. And looks like I might have missed one here. So I'm going to add one up here. These are very, very simple leaves. And I've got a couple over on this side.
And is there a rule to picking colors for painting?
I'll be honest with you, you can do whatever you want, whatever floats your boat, whatever your most favorite colors are, whatever your theme is that you might be decorating for. You know, obviously this might be great for fall, so pick fall colors. This color palette that I am using, I just thought would be really pretty for the fall season. So it's a lot of golds and browns, and the Pueblo kind of brings in the oranges. But then we still have some greens, and our greens in the fall tend to be more richer greens. And that's why I have the Thicket with the teal for our darker color greens in here. So it just really depends upon what you like, what color schemes you like to decorate with, and what theme you might be painting for.
Okay.
All right. Did that answer the question, I hope?
I think so.
Okay, thank you, Caitlin. Looks like I got a little bit out of my brown leaf here. All right, so what we're going to do next, we have our brown leaves in and we have our light gold yellowy leaves in. Let's go back to our brown leaves. So I've kind of rinsed out that yellow ochre or the golden color that was in my brush. And what I want to do now is I want to fill my brush with what we call the local color. It's the base color. So I'm going to fill my brush again with that coffee latte. I'm just stroking into the puddle and I flip the brush over. I'm filling both sides. Then what I'm going to do is side load into our dark brown. And my brown again is real brown. You could also use bark brown. You could use burnt umber. So I have a brush that has our coffee latte in one side, and I have my dark brown on the other side, and I'm blending on the palette. So I've got a really dark color going over into the lighter brown. Both browns are on the same brush. I'm going to hold my brush so that the brown, the darker brown, my color is the real brown, is going to be towards the base of the leaf. And I'm just going to pat blend all the way around that kind of circle of the bottom of the leaf. So for every base of the brown leaves, we're going to come in and we're going to just pat, 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 pat all the way across. So I'm just kind of using almost a circular motion, patting that dark brown on along the base of the leaf. So you're going to notice that you're going to have to turn your work around for every little leaf because they're all painted in as an overall pattern in every different direction. So you're just going to pat that color on. If you feel you're not getting enough of the darker brown, just stop and reload your brush, pick up a little bit more, and then pat that on. The leaf here at the top that's falling off the edge, make sure you kind of blend that well off the edge of the canvas. Same thing with the any leaves that you might have placed right up underneath the interior square. It's just a short, choppy pat, pat, pat blend. That's all we're doing. And turn your work so that you always have the base of the leaf towards you. And just a few more. And I'll be done with mine. And one more here underneath. So I haven't really brought that dark brown out to the tip. My tip is still the coffee latte. Now what we want to do, and I'm going to bring mine up so you can see it close. We want to take a vein and we want to bring a vein from the base of the leaf or even beyond the base of the leaf, almost like a little stem that's extending out. And we're going to pull it up towards the center. Don't make a straight stick. We don't want straight lines. We want them to slightly curve and have a little more grace from the base out towards the tip, from the base out towards the tip. So you can do it a couple different ways. I'll show you. You can stick with this same brush loaded with our dark brown and our light brown, our coffee latte and our real brown. This time you'll turn the brush so that it's straight up against your surface. And you're going to use this part of the brush called the chisel edge. Oh, I'm so glad you're learning something, Jennifer. That's so nice. Thank you for sharing. So what we're going to do now is start with just the chisel edge, and you're going to be straight up and down this way. I don't want to do it this way because I don't want you just to see the top of my hand. So I'm going to turn mine to my side here so that maybe you can see brush direction. And I'm going to start out beyond. I use very light pressure on this chisel edge of the brush, and I'm just going to pull it up into the leaf. Practice maybe here a few times on your palette if you're not familiar with that stroke. Or I'm going to show you another thing. If you like working with a liner brush, you can fill that liner brush up with that dark brown, and you can, if it's easier for you, you can even do the same thing. You're going to be, again, straight up and down, but I'm going to turn mine so that you can see. You can even start with the liner brush and kind of paint like a line like that. So it doesn't make any difference to me whether you use the chisel edge of the flat brush or you use a liner brush, but you want to paint a nice, slightly arcing, slightly curving line as a vein down the center of each of these brown leaves. And you're going to use your darker of the two browns, which is your real brown. Very simply done. You're not gonna, these are not fussy leaves. It's not really a fussy painting. It's just kind of very attractive, but simply done. These veins again are arcing. You don't want straight sticks or straight stems.
And is there a recommendation for the type or brand of brushes they should buy?
Michael sells all sorts of brushes. The brushes I'm using tonight happen to be the FolkArt one-stroke brushes that Plaid manufactures, but you can use any kind of a really nice, you want a really nice, strong golden filament here. You want a brush that has a lot of spring or snap. You want a brush that brings itself back up to its original shape as you pinch the bristles together again. All right, let's move on to our small little golden leaves now. Now these leaves, they are blushed with a tint of Pueblo on the tip of each of these. We've painted all of these right now solid, and the solid color that we painted them was our yellow ochre. We're now going to put just a little bit of Pueblo up at the tip of the leaf. So I'm going to bring this up so you can see closely. It's just kind of putting a blush on these, if you will. So usually I go into my local color and then I do my side loading with the next color. But right now what we're going to do is just side load with the Pueblo only. And I've got a brush that has some moisture in it. It's not soaking wet, but I do have a little bit of water in my brush. And I'm just going to come along and turn it so that the tip is up towards me. And I'm going to touch down with the Pueblo on the outside of the leaf, probably about like maybe 9 o'clock. And I'm going to push down or pat down till I hit the tip, and then come out from the tip and come up maybe towards 3 o'clock. So if you think of the leaf about in half, you're just doing the top half of that leaf. Let me turn it around so you can see there. And here's one where the tip is already kind of facing me. So I'm starting at 9 o'clock and I'm coming up to the tip. I'm going to stop, pick up from the tip, and then come back towards like 3 o'clock. That's all I'm doing to blush the tips of these leaves. So let's go ahead and do the 3 that are on this side. Very, very simple, right? But very effective. And we are going to do my last one here. And like I said, if you enjoy painting at a slower pace, we don't have that luxury here tonight during our Michael's community classes. So if you like to paint a little bit slower, just do a couple of them and come back and do the rest of them later, because you're going to learn how to do this. And as Elsa was saying in the beginning, this class is being recorded. So you will have this to listen to at the end, well, probably within 24 to 48 hours on the Michael's channel of YouTube. I'm adding 2 more colors out onto my palette, and these are the colors that we're going to use for our green fern-like leaves. And the colors I'm adding are Teal and Thicket. Teal obviously has a little bit more blue-green to it, and the Thicket has more like a darker green color. So what we're going to do are these little leaves here. And for every one, I have a V. They're kind of one longer stem going out and arcing towards the left, and a shorter stem that comes out and kind of arcs towards the right. But there's two stems for every single one of our pairs of green here. So we're going to start with our choice for you, chisel edge of the flat brush and create that stem with the dark brown, which is our real brown. Or if you prefer working with the liner brush, you're going to paint that stem out with the liner brush. So let's do that first. Doesn't matter to me if you want to do your liner brush or if you want to do your chisel edge of your flat brush, but let's go ahead and get that stem work in. You may have already kind of given yourself a pattern line. So just simply kind of follow that pattern line, and you're just making one long stem. Okay.
And what color could they use instead of teal?
This is the dark brown that we're doing right now. We got our teal and our Thicket out, but we're going to do the stem work in the dark brown. If you don't have teal when we get to doing our leaves, you could try doing aqua with a little bit of our Thicket added to it. And excuse me, there are 3 sets of these little leaves, almost kind of like a little fern leaf. Excuse me. There we go. So I've got 3 sets, 1, 2, and 3. My third one's way up here. And this, I did mine with my liner brush, so I'm going to clean that out and set that aside. And now I think I'm going to switch down to a smaller brush. You can go to like maybe a number 6 flat. And what we're going to do is we're going to load that brush actually with both colors at the same time. We're going to use the teal and the Thicket at the same time. So I'm going to stroke into my puddle of my teal. And then I'm going to stroke into the puddle of the Thicket. So I've got both colors on the brush at the same time. I'm going to start each of these little stalks of kind of like a fern type leaf at the very tip. And I'm just going to push down, not with the flat of the brush. This is what we call the flat of the brush. I'm going to turn that brush up on its edge and touch down a corner of that brush. So I'm going to touch down, apply some pressure, pull and lift. And look at how pretty that stroke is with a rounded tip versus the flat strokes here. So I'm putting teal and Thicket in my brush. I'm going to bring this up so maybe you can see closer. And I'm going to touch a corner down first. My brush is not flat. Remember, my brush is up on its edge. And I'm going to touch down and push and lift. And then if you've left yourself little pattern lines, you're just going to continue filling in those 2 little pattern lines of leaves. My leaves are paired. In other words, they're directly across from each other on this particular little plant. And I'm going to do, did we have a question?
Nope.
Okay. And so every time I stop to reload my brush, I may pick up a little bit more teal. Sometimes I might pick up a little bit more of the darker green. So there's going to be variety in these colors of leaves based on what colors I reload my brush with. The pressure that I put on my brush is what's going to determine how fat or how skinny my little leaves are. It's just really, you're taking that corner, you're touching down, pushing and lifting, touching down, pushing and lifting. And this, once you kind of get the muscle memory going on, this is very quick and very easy and very fast. Touch, press, lift, touch, press, lift. You're almost kind of like smushing the brush down to create the little leaves. And depending upon how much paint you have in your brush and how much pressure you put down, the little leaves may not be so little. Maybe they're little, the closer they are out towards the tip of your little sprig of greenery. And maybe they get fatter as they come down towards the base. That's all there is to that leaf. All right, let's come back now and let's get our liner brush. Let's fill that liner brush with some of our dark brown, and let's get some stems in for our berries, and let's also put some veins in these little golden leaves. So I'm going to take and use just a little bit of water in my brush over to the puddle of our darkest brown, real brown. I'm going to thin that and get a brush filled with the thinned paint. My liner brush is a number 1. Yes, Sandy. And I tend to use a number 1, and I tend to use the shorter liner brush because it's my comfort zone. But if you want to use a number 2 script liner, that can be the same thing and can do just the same exercise with you. So I'm going to bring this up so you can see on our little tiny golden leaves here, what we want to do is just pull a stem into that. That's with our darkest brown. And you're going to start outside of the bottom or the base of the leaf and kind of bring that almost like a tail. You're going to bring that stem all the way up into that leaf. So you've got 5 of these little leaves that you need to connect with the stem. And again, these are kind of arcing lines, pattern lines. You're not pulling straight sticks. You want them to be very graceful. I put more pressure on my brush when I start this to pull a line, less pressure as I get towards the tip. And that's what's going to give us those fine, beautiful fine lines. Now, the rest of our painting here is just 2 different styles of berries. We've got this 1, 2, 3 stalks of berries that are kind of a yellow ochre type berry. So let's get this brown stem work in first, okay? So I'm going to use the same liner brush, same thinned dark brown. And I am going to just start with the main stem first, pulling that out. And then there's all kinds of little short lines from that stem to indicate the little tiny branches that our berries are going to be on. So I would pull those from the main stem outwards. Try not to pull them in towards the stem, okay? So there's one. Let's get another one up here. As you're working around, remember some of your colors might still be a little wet too, so be careful not to get your fingers into the wet paint. And I've got one more yet to do, and that's the one in my most upper right corner. And I'm just pulling those branches out. If you didn't transfer this particular line, don't worry, just kind of do your own thing. You're just pulling branches out that will then become areas for our berries. Now these, let's tell you what, while we're still working with our liner brush and our dark brown, let's go ahead and put the branches or stems in for our other berries. We have another berry here that's very short, and that too is just brown. It's our deepest brown, our real brown, and let's go ahead and put that stem work in as well. And these are more straight, less curvy, just a straight line and straight branches off of our line. This is a different kind of berry, so we don't want the same look. And I start with putting that center line in And then I finish up with just pulling my stems out or my little branches out. And I'm pulling out from the main stem. Here's one right down here. Turn your work, make it easy for you, whether you like to stroke from you or if you like to stroke away from you. Find your comfort zone and then turn your work so that it makes sense for you. Okay, all right, now I'm gonna clean my liner brush, set that aside. For the 3 little clumps that have our yellow ochre berries, this is done with the smallest flat brush that you have. You can use, gosh, as small as a number 2, you could use a number 4, you could even use the corner of a number 6. But you're gonna fill that brush, that small flat brush, with your yellow ochre. And both sides of the brush, you want it nice and full, the full flat of the brush. Then again, we're not going to do the flat of the brush. We're going to turn that brush up and let a corner touch down first. And that is our little berry. So we're just everywhere where we have these little marks. Now, don't confuse it. It's just these curving ones that we're talking about now. So everywhere where we have an end, we're just going to touch down and make a little mark. Touch down and pull, touch down and pull. So we're making small, tiny little yellow ochre berries using the corner of your flat brush, and you're touching a little bit beyond that stem or that branch and pulling in towards that branch. And it's just a touch down, pull, lift. And reload your brush as you can. You don't want to run out of paint. You want a nice full little berry. These are not exactly little round berries. These are almost kind of like a little oblong shape. And let's see, here's one right here. So yellow ochre goes on the tips of all of our brown branches. A touchdown push, you're almost like smushing and lifting. Smush and lift. And as you do this and you move on to the next little branch tip, you see, I wasn't lying, it does go pretty quickly. You could even do it like all down one side of the branch, all on the right side, and then come back and do all the left side. Maybe that's easier for you than trying to do left, right, left, right, left, right. All right, so I've got all my yellow ochre berries on, and I am going to rinse out that small flat brush. And I am now going to pick up my liner brush, and I'm going to load just the tip of the liner brush with my Pueblo. With the Pueblo, you're going to make just a tiny little circle dot on the end of each of these little yellow ochre berries. You're just giving that berry a little tip. So I'm going to touch down and touch down and touch down. I did these 3 right here on the end. I'm just adding burnt umber little dots almost, if you will, on the end of each of these berries that are yellow ochre. Just touching down. And you're going to do that to all of your yellow ochre berries. Just an added little detail to your little berry foliage. Stop and reload your brush every so often. Again, this is not difficult, just very simple little touches. I've got 2 more berries here. Okay. Now the last little berry that we're doing that was just pretty much a straight brown stick for the stem and then the little branches out, that just gets a little circle of our Pueblo, same color. you could do two different things. You can take the liner brush if you want, and you can touch down and make a little circle and kind of keep that going around and create a very small little berry circle. Or you can, I'm going to clean this paint out of the tip here. Or if you want, look at all your brushes and find the one that has the smallest handle. And you can use that handle end. You could also use your stylus that has a double points here, balls on the end. And you want to go ahead and just touch down with your stylus, the paintbrush handle, whatever you want to do, and make a little dot there. Now, I made a dot with my stylus, but to me, that berry might be a little small. So what I can do is I can fill my stylus with paint, and I can come back and I can make a circle with my stylus. And look at the difference between those two berries. So I could use the handle end of my paintbrush and do this, or my stylus, and just add some Pueblo berries onto the more straight lines of our stems for the other berries. So you have nothing to do right now but putting the Pueblo berries on for everywhere where you have the little brown. And these, I think I saw a moment ago, someone said burgundy would be a good color to add to this. Yes, it would. Burgundy would be a good color if you were changing these into Christmas colors. I love this combination of the golds and the kind of orangey browns and the browns and that deep, deep green and the teal. To me, this is a real pretty fall color palette too. So now all our leaves are done, all our berries are done, and let's talk about how I finished the inside of the square. I'm going to take that liner brush with some water and thin down my color here that is our Pueblo, and we're just going to paint a wiggly jiggly line just to kind of give this little square a little more character. This is kind of fun, especially by chance if you're a beginner and it's hard for you to keep lines straight. This is a great cheat for anyone that wants to do a real professional looking job, but maybe is hard for them to do the little lines and keep the lines straight. So I am just taking the chisel edge of my, the tip of my #1 liner, and I'm just doing a wiggly jiggly line. I did this line right down the side here. And look how that gives it just a little bit more of a finishing touch to your square. If by chance you didn't get your corners in as warm and toasty as you like them, maybe you want to make a little bit more yellow ochre in your corners. Maybe you want to pick up a little bit more Pueblo, make your corners a little bit deeper with the orangey terracotta color. You can always float that in and darken those up a little bit more too. Don't try and make a straight line. Let your hand kind of wiggle jiggle. That's all part of the look. Okay, the last thing we're going to do on the center of our heart here is to write in the word gather. Now, if you like this just as is, and maybe you want to put a family photo in the middle when all is said and done, that's fine. Don't write the word gather. This is just because I was thinking it was gathering the season. So if you want to write the word gather, I did transfer my pattern line. There, you can barely see it, but it's there. I would suggest you putting the pattern in line, or the pattern line in first. You're going to take your liner brush and you're going to really thin down some of the teal color. The letters are all painted teal. They are then shaded with our Thicket, and then we are going to outline with the dark brown. So I'll just do a couple letters here just to kind of show you. When I do lettering, and if I teach lettering, I like to teach that when you are holding the brush, you're going to hold the brush straight up and down to your surface. And then when you touch down, you're going to touch down if you are moving, well, if you're going to write a letter, write sections of the letter. Don't try and do one whole long cursive letter. Do sections of the letter. When you're doing what we call downward strokes, when you're stroking in that direction, you're going to have more pressure on the brush, which is going to make a fatter line. When you are doing upward strokes, like for instance, going up on the G, then you're going to have a lot less pressure and you're going to make a skinnier stroke. So that's basically the key things to remember when you are doing anything that's brush lettering. So I'll go ahead and maybe just do G and A for tonight's time's sake, and then you can know to do the same thing with the rest of the word. So I would be doing this again straight on, but I don't want you to see my hand. So I'm going to turn mine sideways so maybe you could see a little bit better. When I'm going up on the letter G, I'm going to use less pressure on my liner brush. And I'm going to go all the way up to the top and then maybe stop, especially if you're a beginner. If it's easier for you to go up that way, stop. Then connect your line again. And I'm starting down, so I'm going to use some pressure. I'm going up, so I'm going to do less pressure. Let me just connect this a little bit better. There we go. Then on the rest of my G, I'm going to be going downward. So what am I going to do? I'm going to use more pressure on the brush. So I'm going down and I'm coming up. So I'm using less pressure. And that's my G. Now, if I want to make it fatter, I can come back and retrace over this line and make that part fatter. If I want to make the part coming down fatter, you can just retrace over it and make it a little bit fatter. So you can play around with the weight on your letters, make them what you want. So let's go on to the letter A. So I'm going to start up here at the top of the A, and I'm going to be going down. So what am I going to do? I'm going to use pressure. Then I'm going to use light pressure coming up because it's an upward stroke. So that's the difference of the weight of these marks of the letters. I'm coming down, more pressure. Going up to my T, less pressure. So that's all you want to do as you continue on with the rest of the letters. I'm coming down on my T and I'm getting ready to go up. So I'm going to use less pressure, but maybe I want the weight of my T to match the other letters. So maybe I'll come back over that again one more time just to make it a little bit fatter. Once you do all of your letters, mine are still wet, you do want them to dry. And what you're going to do then is come back with your Thicket. And I'm going to turn this upside down so that the bottom of the letter I'll be pulling up or stroking up towards me. And I'm going to start at the bottom of each of these letters with this time just the Thicket. No Teal, just Thicket. I'm going to touch down and I'm going to pull up. And then I'm going to touch down and pull up. That green is going to darken the base of these teal letters. So I'll show you up on the finished one here. The bottom of my letters are darker than the top of my letters. The last thing I'm going to do with the lettering here is I'm going to then come back with that beautiful dark brown. That is our real brown. And I'm still using my liner brush and I keep adding a little bit of water. Thank you, Cynthia. I just saw your comment. Thank you. I appreciate that very much. I'm now going to thin my brush. Thin my paint. That is the real brown. And with this, I'm going to look at each of my letters and I'm going to take the left side of each letter and outline it. So the left side, and I also do the bottoms. So I'm going to turn mine sideways here. So the left side of this G is going to be this part right here. So I'm just outlining with the brown on the left side. If it helps you to just think left side on every single section of the letter first, then go ahead and do that. Just the left side, but you want the bottoms too. So I'm going to go here on the bottom of my G. And this is the bottom of the top part of the G. So don't forget any part. This is the left side of this part. And that little curlicue that comes inside, I need to do the left side and the bottom of that. Think of left and bottom of every single section of every letter. And that's with your dark brown and coming along on the T here, and then I will line the bottom of the T. So when I'm all said and done, let me show you this. Look real close. You can see that brown lettering. It's just basically an outline on the left side and the bottom of every single letter. Then I'm going to clean that brush, and I am going to, you probably noticed mine has a whole bunch of freckles. It's what we call fly specking. So I fly specked a couple different colors on mine, and to me, the fly specking, when you use it in the right way, it just adds so much character to a painting, and it gives a little bit more charm, a little bit more warmth. I fly specked the center of my design with mostly our Pueblo. This is that terracotta color on the inside. I used mostly the yellow ochre on the outside. So you're thinking, well, how can you do yellow ochre out here and not get it on the center? Well, you can wait till everything is dry, and you can simply take a paper towel and you can cut a paper towel to the right size. I don't have scissors here, but let's pretend I cut my square. Maybe it's more like this. And you can make a mask, and you can put that square down to block this area while I'm fly specking all the way around. And then when you get ready to fly speck the inside, then you could take your paper towel and do a block like this, like mask off all the way around. So you can make a paper mask when you get ready to fly speck. And so I use a toothbrush to fly speck. And there's a happy medium when you're trying to find the correct medium for fly specking. So I first get a lot of water. You can see here, maybe you can see bubbles of water on my palette. I get a lot of water in my paintbrush. And then I bring the tip or the bristles of the brush into the paint color that I want to do, which is my Pueblo right now. I'll bring it over here to the water, and I want to thin that down. You don't want it so thick. Well, let's go back and say this again. Too much water is going to make great big huge blobs of paint, and you're not going to get the nice fine little sprays of little color. Not enough water, and you're going to have it so tiny that you're barely going to see a fly speck. So it's like Goldilocks. There's a happy moment there where you're going to have just the right amount of water. I always test either on my palette or I test on a paper towel here before I go directly to my surface. And you want to check the size of your bristles, check the size of your dots. I think there's a lot more water in mine right now, so I'm going to come back and add more. Always adjust. I'm going to add a little bit more paint to mine and test again. That's much more what I want. So there's a difference. You could see here as it absorbed, there was a lot more water in that versus what I'm getting here at the top of my paper towel. So I'm just going to very carefully, I know my lettering isn't done. I can always come back and do this. Without masking mine, I'm just going to very carefully do a little bit of the Pueblo here in the center. And if you get a little Pueblo out onto the outside edge, it's not going to hurt anything. This is a great way to put snow on winter pictures too. If you're painting a snowman, you can do that same way. What I'm doing is I'm letting my finger run across the bristles, and little flecks of paint are just falling out all over. This is what we call fly specking. And this is the same kind of concept as if a fly flew into your wet palette and then walked all over your project. So that's why we call this fly specking. Now I'm going to get the Pueblo out of my brush. And I'm going to do the same thing and repeat it with just a little bit of our yellow ochre. Oh, I'm glad you had a good time, Judith. Thank you. I hope you painted along. For those of you that did paint along tonight, be sure and always share your work on our Facebook groups. I always like for you to become a member, first of all, of our Let's Paint with Plaid group. If you are not yet a member, it's a wonderful learning, caring, sharing group of painters all on a journey to learn how to paint. And I would love for you to become a member and share your work in our group. I'm just fly specking the yellow ochre here now on the outside of my painting. And you all probably noticed it. I didn't notice it when I was painting, but I left out a brown. Right here, there's a blank. There should be one more brown leaf here. I see my pattern is there. I didn't see it when I was painting. Shame on me, right? Okay, so there we go, friends. That's all there is to it. I'm going to clean my fingers out to get the paint off my fingers. And that is how we paint gather. Did we have any other questions, Caitlin?
Sorry, that mute button is
Tricky, huh?
Let me check.
I'm reading some of the, would you paint, oops, I missed it. Would you paint the entire canvas? You know what, if you wanted to start the, obviously in tonight's class, we don't have a lot of time and we don't have drying time. I also had on the supply list the vintage white. And if you wanted to, now see, there's not much difference between my two here. You could paint the whole entire canvas first with your vintage white, or even a white first, and then start in like I taught tonight in class. We don't have a lot of drying time. We don't have a lot of painting time together. So I skipped that part. And you know what? It looks just as good this way versus the original. So if you wanted to do one, if you didn't paint with me tonight and you're going to do yours later, maybe you want to base coat all of yours first with a creamy white or a warm white color, and then transfer all your patterns on. But this is all you need to do. It's very, very simple. The recording is going to be uploaded to the Michaels channel on YouTube, probably within 24 to 48 hours. So you can rewatch, you can play it, stop it, pause it, paint along, pick it back up again, rewind it. You can do all of those things once the video recording is live on YouTube. Any questions, Caitlin? Did you see any?
Nope, I think that's
Okay.
it.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for painting along and painting gather with me. Remember, in 2 weeks, you can start watching the 12 days of Christmas card making here in Michael's Community Classroom. And the last day, the 12th day, I'll be here teaching. We're going to do a fun little Santa Claus, not your traditional fat, rosy-cheeked big guy. We're going to paint a different kind of fellow. I paint lots and lots of Santa Clauses, so always want to bring you something new and different. And we'll be painting on a greeting card and an envelope. So be looking for some blank greeting cards and join in the fun. I look forward to seeing you 2 weeks from tonight. Again, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here in Michael's Community Classroom. So until next time, thank everybody. Y'all have a great day.